Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Interesting just to reflect on the thinking that is coming from the identitarian left as it pertains to the war in Israel, and particularly the invective directed at Jews both there and here and everywhere. So you had that professor in California who has been charged in the killing of Paul Kessler during competing protests. Paul Kessler, a Jewish gentleman from L.A.
Hit him in the head with a microphone. He fell down and died.
He was protesting on behalf of, or supporting Israel, and this, I guess he's Jordanian. I mean, he's an American citizen. This professor charged in the killing holds both U.S. and Jordanian passports. But he posted a video that we played for you. This is before the incident, where he compared Hamas to Toussaint Louverture and Nat Turner and Mahatma Gandhi. The quality of the thinking of someone who would make those comparisons after, knowing everything we already knew about Hamas, but particularly after October 7th, just puts an exclamation point on it. And then fast forward a couple of weeks, and what do we see last week? The circulation of Osama bin Laden's letter to America that is being amplified on social media by these ignorant leftists who are suggesting it was a moment of epiphany for them about America, and they never look at America again, and essentially saying that Osama bin Laden had all these good points, and his entire letter is not very complicated. It's not very deep. It all boils down to basically Islamofascism is good and everything else is not. That was his letter that captivated the minds of so many on the left as they expressed on social media. Again, all the idea of thinking that I'm going to run to social media to react to this that apparently they were never exposed to, the quality of our government school system in this country. Thinking about the thinking behind the ignorance that is amplified. So I was interested in this piece by Joel Engel, in which he brought up the Paul Kessler case. And apparently that happened just a couple miles from where Mr. Engel lives. He writes, for more than a decade, Kessler was known to be a prolific letter writer to our community's free weekly newspaper, always taking the liberal left position, as most secular Jews seem to do. One imagines that he, like millions of us, had been shocked to find that many of the people he had always believed were his philosophical and political compatriots actually hated him for being a Jew. Whether they had all along is irrelevant. That they do now is why Jews in this country wonder whether we'll ever feel as comfortable as we always had. And it explains why we're so grateful to Gentiles of goodwill who have reached out. I want to explore that a little bit more, and we're pleased to have Joel Engel on to do that. He's an author and journalist who co-authored By George, the autobiography of George Foreman, and most recently, Scorched Worth, a true story of destruction, deceit, and government corruption. That's pretty wide range between George Foreman and Scorched Worth. Joel Engel, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning. Thank you. There is no common thread through any of the 20 or so books I've written.
Okay, all right. Did you get some? Did you at least get a grill out of the George Foreman piece, or?
Oh, it predated the grill.
Oh, predates the grill. All right. Well, but on that point you made about Kessler always taking the liberal left position, and it didn't matter that it doesn't matter now that he's been killed. What people he thought might have been his fellow travelers actually thought of him. But going forward, doesn't it matter that people understand who is on their side and, so to speak, who's on the side of civilization, really, and who isn't? Doesn't that matter?
Well, it matters very much, and the shock to people like me, Jews of goodwill, who assume that, yeah, there are anti-Semites, but they're never going to come for you, that America has been the safest country in the history as long as Jews have been on the planet. They've never been safer than they were in America. To discover that sub rosa, there was not just a current of anti-Semitism, but a raging river of it that required only some catalyst, an on button to turn it on and get it to the point where you have people, thousands, millions of people chanting for the people who live streamed the most grotesque atrocities anyone has ever seen, and then deny that it happened, and or attribute these atrocities to Israel. So you have, on the one hand, you have former Holocaust deniers now wishing Hitler had finished the job, and then denying these things happen, and again attributing them to Jews. It's been quite a wake-up call for millions of us. I think I can speak safely and give that number.
Well, NYU, which platformed a lot of anti-Semitism, including at its law school, including with the editor of its law journal. She was one of the people that was identified right out of the gate by donors to say, don't hire this person at your law firm, if or essentially just arguing that as a matter of culture, not a matter of law. But NYU now is saying, oh, we're going to have a center that we stand up in 2024 so people can study anti-Semitism. And you see some other sort of backtracking, and we're going to set up a program, we're going to set up an institute at the collegiate level with all of these quote-unquote elite schools that are havens for all of this Jew hatred, as we've seen. Some of us knew already, knew for a long time, but as a lot of people have seen, as you said, a lot of scales have fallen from eyes. Is that good enough? Or what should Jewish Americans, and particularly those in positions of hiring people, in positions of being a philanthropist and donating to causes, to institutions, what should they be demanding, saying, doing?
Well, I think the first thing is the DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, never included Jews. It was in essence distinctly anti-Jewish, since Jews are by and large per capita more successful possibly than anyone other than Asian Americans, and that wasn't allowed. And it's, by the way, no accident that Harvard and other elite universities are slow to accept very accomplished Asians. So it was always an anti-Jewish, whether explicit or implicit. So it's not a surprise that all of the people who have matriculated through that petri dish came out with these attitudes. Now, I don't know how you can stop it, because even these seminars that are being put on to address anti-Semitism, they're having anti-Semites on the panel,
right?
So there's really.
And the non-anti-Semites, and the non-anti-Semites get shouted down by the students.
That's right. So I don't mean to be pessimistic. What I'm hoping is that money will talk, but the problem is that money talks, and much of the money coming from that the universities are given, the shortfall that will be made up by people, billionaires, both Jewish and non-Jewish, of goodwill, who don't want to see this going on, because it really does. It is a sledgehammer to the pillars of Western civilization, of which America is the greatest avatar. It will be more than made up, I believe, by Qatar and maybe even Saudi Arabia, and other entities, countries that have billions of oil dollars.
But how do you win the PR war? I mean, Hamas is winning the PR war. They're getting the young kids. They're out on college campuses. We've had shutdown of Lakeshore Drive, and that's only the beginning because they said, they're not stopping. How can we do to change this? I mean, not for right away, but in the future.
Well, I think people have to keep speaking out. I have been overwhelmed by since my piece came out in the Wall Street Journal last Thursday. I've been overwhelmed by the volume of email I've gotten, comments to the journal itself, and online across all social media. It is at least 60 to 65%. We stand with you, and that needs to continue to happen. We stand with you. People speaking out so that because in the early 1930s, the Germans of goodwill, Gentile Germans of goodwill, were standing with Jews, and then they gave it up. I don't believe that's the case in this country. So I think when the numbers come in and people keep speaking out, and we overwhelm the 30 to 35% of people who want me to die, who told me flat out via email they should die, should suffer the fate of some of the poor people in Israel on October 7th. It's as much up to Jews to keep speaking out, but also by far the vast majority of Gentiles, especially religious Gentiles in this country, to say this is not in our name.
I agree with that, and I mean, and the reality is that basically, certainly 45 plus, but even 35 plus are majority, and then it gets super majority with Israel here. But there's definitely a problem, 18 to 35. And that speaks to the culture, and that speaks to the school systems and so forth. But what about
those are the people who matriculated through these DEI programs.
Yes.
I don't know. We used to laugh and say that the poor snowflakes who needed safe spaces as soon as they got into the real world would wake up and go, oh, okay, that's not how the real world works, except that the real world decided to accommodate them and give them safe spaces. So I'm afraid that it's possible the same thing will happen here. Now, if these people, especially at the elite universities, if they can't get hired, if that holds, that's a very, very good thing.
Mm-hmm. And also, there's things that we can do as a country, too, Congress. I mean, there's no reason that we have to let Qatar pour $4 billion into otherwise at least partially publicly funded universities. That spigot can be turned off too, just as the Chinese communist spigot can be turned off. These are things that we can do if we have the political willpower, and that speaks to the political balance of power. I mean, you mentioned it in your piece. Everybody knows it, that most secular Jews align with the Democrat Party. Does that need to change?
Well, it absolutely needs to change. 20 years ago, in the now defunct Weekly Standard, I wrote a piece noticing that by far the Democratic Party was becoming known as it was emerging as the party. It wasn't overtly anti-Semitic, but if you were going to be anti-Semitic and political, you were far more likely to be a member of the Democratic Party. I revisited that piece recently and saw how prescient it was. Alas, I would love to have been wrong by that. But you have the squad, and you have a growing number of people who, social democrats, who are anti-Israel. Again, and it has to do with DEI, the equity. Equity is very bad for Jews, and that's why Jews were never part of the inclusion in that acronym.
Joel Engel is an author and journalist, co-authored by George, the autobiography of George Foreman, and most recently, Scorched Earth, a true story of destruction, deceit, and government corruption. Joel Engel, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Before you see it on TV, share it on Facebook, or read about it in the paper. Hear it here first. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Signature Bank is Chicago's fastest growing independently owned business bank. Your business and your money are in good hands with Signature Bank. I'm Dan Proft, and I know this because Signature Bank is my business bank.
Hi, I'm Nick Philippus, co-owner of Joe Donut and a proud customer of Signature Bank. We're a locally owned artisan donut shop that focuses on chef-made small batch and craft donuts. We have 7 locations around the Chicagoland suburbs, with an 8th location coming soon.